Okay, let's talk about one of the absolute hardest parts of writing any academic paper, the conclusion. You know, for so long we've all been taught to just summarize. But what if your conclusion could do so much more? In this explainer, we're going to break down how to write those final sentences so they don't just repeat what you've said, they show real, impressive critical thinking.
So, does this sound familiar? You've written this amazing essay, you've poured everything into it. You get to the end, and suddenly you're just restating your introduction with slightly different words. It is such a common problem. But you know what? It's also a massive missed opportunity. And the difference is, well, it's night and day. A simple summary is just looking backward, right? It's rehashing old info. But a conclusion that shows real critical thinking, it looks forward. It cracks open the door to new ideas, and that's what leaves a lasting, impressive mark on your reader. That's the goal. That's the shift we're going for.
So, how do we actually make that shift? Well, it all comes down to changing your mindset. Instead of just summarizing what you've already written, you start analyzing what your work really means for the bigger picture. The key to all of this is finding what's missing.
And that missing piece, it actually has a name. It's called a research gap. This is the secret ingredient to a powerful conclusion. And look, a research gap isn't a flaw in your paper, not at all. It's an opportunity you've uncovered for other people to explore. Finding one proves that you really understand the entire conversation, not just your own little corner of it.
And you can break it down into this really simple three-step process. First, you spot the gap. Second, you present an idea for how someone could fill it. And third, and this is the part that really matters, you explain the impact. Why is filling that gap so important? That is the heart of an unforgettable conclusion.
Okay, to make this whole thing even easier, we've put together a practical toolkit for you. I'm going to give you 6 powerful sentence structures that you can literally start using today to put that 3-step process into action. So let's start with a foundational tool. This phrase right here is a really straightforward, academically sound way to point directly to a research gap. It's clean, it's professional, and it gets the job done. But here's where the magic happens. Here's how we level it up. The basic sentence is fine, sure, but look at that expansion. It doesn't just name the gap, it suggests a specific future study looking at changes over time, and it explains the impact to get a clearer picture of the psychological effects. See, that's critical thinking in action.
All right, tool number 2. This is a great phrase that shows you've really done your homework and dug into the existing literature. You use this to point out a common blind spot or a narrow focus in the research that's already out there.
And once again, let's see how we can build this out. Instead of just stopping at the problem, which here is a focus on short-term outcomes, we propose a solution. Let's explore the long-term patterns. And the impact? Doing that could reveal way more consistent, more meaningful trends. You're not just pointing out a flaw, you're suggesting a fix.
Okay, now for a bit of a more advanced move. This is a really powerful 2-part structure. It lets you first acknowledge what has been studied, and then you pivot hard to what's been ignored. It creates this really clear and effective contrast.
This is a perfect example. We state what we know, most research is on city populations, and we contrast it with what we don't know. There's very little data on rural areas, and then we explain why that matters. Studying rural populations could highlight some really crucial differences in access to things like healthcare.
Oh, I love this one. Here's a phrase that just sounds super smart and academically mature. Scant evidence is a really strong, formal way of saying, hey, there just isn't enough proof for this thing everyone seems to believe. It's about challenging the status quo.
So you can make a pretty bold claim, like this one here about online learning. But you don't just leave it hanging. You immediately propose how to fix the problem. We need more long-term studies. And you state the payoff. We could finally clarify the true effectiveness of digital education. This next one is for when you've discovered something totally new, a genuinely unexplored territory. It's especially powerful for topics that are new or evolving really fast.
I mean, look how perfect this is for a topic like AI. You state that, as of right now, nobody has really studied its effect on student writing. Then you suggest that future research needs to jump on that because we need to understand both the good and the bad of this brand new technology.
And here's our final tool. This one's a little more nuanced. It acknowledges that, yes, some research exists, but it makes the case that it's just not enough. This lets you join a conversation that's already happening while also pushing it in a new, important direction.
So yeah,
People have probably studied sleep and grades before, but you're arguing it needs more investigation. And why? Because digging deeper into that relationship could directly lead to strategies that actually help improve student outcomes. It connects the research gap directly to a real-world benefit.
Okay, so we've got the tools. But knowing about a tool and knowing how to use it are two different things, right? The key is to turn all this theory into a skill you can use again and again through practice.
Here's a simple 4-step exercise you can do for your very next essay. First, find just one limitation related to your topic. Second, grab one of the 6-sentence structures we just went over. Third, add a specific idea for a future study. And finally, explain the potential impact. That's it. If you do this with every paper, I promise it will become second nature.
And here's a little pro tip for the modern age. You can actually use AI as a practice partner. Try giving it a prompt like this one for your essay topic. It can help you brainstorm different ways to phrase these ideas, and that'll just make you a stronger, more flexible writer overall.
So why do we just spend all this time focused on a couple of sentences at the end of your paper? Because honestly, the payoff is huge. This isn't just about good writing. It's about showing a higher level of thinking that completely changes how your work is judged.
When you use these tools, your conclusion is no longer just a boring summary. It proves you're thinking critically. It shows you can identify research gaps. It means you're suggesting meaningful directions for the future. And it just demonstrates real academic maturity. You're no longer just a student repeating information. You are an active participant in an academic conversation. And that level of insight, that can have a direct, positive impact on your grades.
So, as you sit down to work on your next paper, don't just think about how you're going to wrap it up. Think about what comes next. Because the most exciting part of any field of study isn't just what we already know. It's everything we have yet to discover. So the only question left is, what research gap will you find?